Welcome to Pandemic Pantry with Chef Chandler, aka me. Before we actually get started, I want to first say thank you for tuning in, whether you're on Facebook or on the Zoom. I am super stoked to be doing cooking classes again. It's been forever. This is definitely my wheelhouse. I bartend now, but the kitchen is what I was literally born to do. I love being able to put it in a glass because it's faster and interesting, but cooking is my life. So there's a few things I kind of want to go over, just so we can all kind of be speaking the same language when I do these classes. I want everyone to know there are no stupid questions, and this goes for the cocktail classes too. There are literally no stupid questions. As soon as you become a student of mine, whether it's in the cocktail classes or the cooking classes, you become part of what I call the Chandler or the Chef Chandler hotline, and you can message me at any time. And just reach out, even if it doesn't have anything to do with a recipe that I've helped you learn. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I really want to stress the importance of what we in the industry call mise en place or mise in some circles. And basically mise en place is French for everything in its place is a good way to explain it. And what that translates to in the kitchen is pre-cut your things, pre-measure your things. You will be impressed with how quickly you get through recipes if you follow those procedures. Because what I tend to find is a lot of people at home get overwhelmed when they try out new recipes because they kind of cook and cut as they go. Whereas if you just do your prep work, like chopping your onions, measuring out your cheese, measuring out your sauce, having your oil, your salt, your pepper, all of those things ready and on hand, you will breeze through the recipe in half the amount of time. So I'm going to go over the mise en place that I have. Today we're going to be making something called Malfatti, which is an Italian gnocchi recipe based off of ricotta cheese. And I love this recipe for a couple reasons. One, it's delicious and it's made of cheese. So already good idea. Other reason I like it is because the name of the dish, Malfatti, translates as poorly made. So there's literally no way to mess up this recipe. If your shapes are off or your gnocchi's too fat, it doesn't matter because technically it's poorly made, which would mean it is on brand for the recipe. So this is one of those recipes I like to do for first timers that cook with me because it tends to give them that little extra boost of confidence, making a delicious, easy dish. And there's a lot of ways to vary it. So the very first thing you need to do with any recipe, most important part, is to prepare a beverage for the chef, in this case yourself. I am still sipping over my cocktails from my class previously, but I also have a pitcher of punch ready to go. My favorite rule in the kitchen is one for the recipe, one for the cook. So usually I like to cook with alcohol or wine, and if the recipe gets some, so does my mouth. So cheers. And then we're going to start cooking. So for Malfatti, we have a bunch of different ingredients. We have two preparations we're making. We're going to make the gnocchi, and then we're also going to make the garden sauce. And that's just a fancy name that I put on it that's like veggies with tomatoes. You can do anything else. I traditionally serve this gnocchi at home. My favorite way to make it is with a brown butter, sage, and cremini mushroom sauce. But in the spirit of summer, with all the new veggies coming into season, I thought it'd be interesting to serve it with a veggie sauce. Also, that just adds a lot more nutritional value to the dish. I know there's a lot of people at home right now in quarantine trying to figure out ways to stay healthy, but also wanting to feel like they're indulging. So this dish kind of fits the bill. So for the Malfatti, the different ingredients we're going to need, and I'm going to kind of just read out the measurements to you guys first, and then I'm going to go through the procedures just in case you're deciding to mix along with us. So I have 280 grams of ricotta cheese, and I pick a full fat ricotta just because flavor is in fat. It's a fact. So I choose full fat ricotta. You are more than welcome to do this with a low fat or a skim ricotta. I have successfully done this recipe in a vegan strain using soft tofu, but it does require you to really mash up the tofu until it's similar in texture to a ricotta and then really wring out all the excess moisture. So that's a little tidbit on how to alter this recipe if you are dairy intolerant or of the vegan variety of people, unlike myself. So I have 280 grams of ricotta, and then I have 90 grams of breadcrumbs, and these are just the cheapest breadcrumbs that I found at the grocery store. They're Italian seasoning, so they come with like herbs and powdered garlic. And I toasted them a little bit in my skillet. It's not necessary. I just kind of like that flavor a little bit more. Store-bought breadcrumbs tend to have a very raw flour taste, in my opinion. Oh, hey, we're using the same brand, Algae.
Maybe.
Hey.
Yeah, but that translates to cups because that scale is not.
Okay, so for the ricotta, 280 grams is 1 1/8 cup of ricotta. I do recommend doing this with a scale, but I realize that a lot of people don't have those on hand. So I'm going to give you guys the cups as well as the weights. So for 90 grams of breadcrumbs, that's going to be a 3/4 cup. And if you want to go all out, say you make your own bread at home or you have some bread that's going stale, a good way to reuse that would be to slow toast it in the oven and then put it through a food processor if you have one of those and make your own breadcrumbs. Really good way to be sustainable in the times we live in. And then we're going to have 28 grams of grated Parmesan cheese, which is a little bit shy of a 1/4 cup. It's about 3 tablespoons. However, if you are familiar with me and the Danny and Jackie's happy hour that I participate in, I unfortunately forgot to buy Parmesan, even though I planned very hard for this class. So I remembered that there is a very special Texas-shaped aged white cheddar in my fridge, and that is the cheese that is now grated. So if you are familiar with the mouth Texas cheese, say goodbye. This is what it looks like now. All right, so again, 28 grams of Parmesan or approximately a 1/4 cup. And the recipe we're making today, oh, thank you, Texas cheese, yeah. That's a whole story. That's a whole story. So the other ingredient we're going to be using is eggs. So the ratios I'm giving you guys right now are for 2 to 3 portions. Kind of just depends on how much you eat. The full recipe is for 6. So the full recipe requires 3 eggs beaten. So I took 3 eggs and I beat them, and then I divided them in half. So this is technically 1 1/2. And then the rest of the beaten eggs are in my fridge, and I'm going to just make them into scrambled eggs for breakfast. So I've already done half of my work for tomorrow. So I have that. Then you're going to need some salt and some flour. Now the other ingredient that is our flavoring agent, which is something that was in the preparations that I put on the flyer for these classes. I usually include a shopping list and how to do some of the prep work. So the gnocchi itself, you can make it with just these ingredients and be fine, but it works beautifully adding in greens of some variety. My personal favorite is arugula. They were out of that at the store. My second favorite is spinach. Spinach is also much more palatable for a lot more people. But I ended up going with mustard greens. So what I'm going to do, if I can juggle all this technology, is I actually took some videos of me prepping the mustard greens that I have. And you can use collard greens. You can use, what are the other ones? Collard greens, radish greens. You can use carrot tops. Miss LG is using baby kale. All of those are valid options. And like I said, you don't have to use greens. I just think they add a beautiful tone to it. You could also use basil. It would be very intensely flavored. But I'm going to try, let's see if I can get these videos. If I can't get the videos on screen, then I'm just going to just explain it and then post the videos later. But let's see if I can juggle all this technology. Probably not. To be quite honest, it's a lot going on, people. I think this might be the right way. Not the right way. All right, let's try and do it this way. This is gonna be terrible video quality, but we will make it work. So with my mustard greens are a hardier green, which means they're tougher. They require longer cooking, such as collard greens, turnip greens, radish greens, all of those things. So spinach obviously is a little bit softer, would not require these preparations or as long of a cooking process. So what I did first was, never mind, all these videos are out of order. I don't know how to do this. So I'm gonna just explain it to you. I will post the videos in the Facebook group and on the Underground Cooking Club once the class is over. So what I did, mustard greens tend to be big and leafy with a really thick stalk in the middle. So I removed the stalk and then just left the leaves. I would not say throw the stalk away. It's definitely not useless. You could use it in stocks. You could use it to make pestos. You could put it in smoothies if you're into green smoothies. But I just wanted the leaves because those stalks are really hard to chop up really finely. And I don't own a food processor. And I wanted to have the smoothest texture possible for my gnocchi. So I took the stalks out, took the green leaves. So if this is a baby one, this is a very baby one. Make it closer to the screen so it looks bigger. Imagine it's this big. So I just pretty much removed the leaves like so. And then these stalks that came out, I'm gonna save for something else. And then I heated a little bit of olive oil in my skillet, added in the mustard green leaves, sprinkled them with some salt, put in about 2 or 3 tablespoons of water, and then I put a lid on my skillet. And I let those cook for about 15 minutes on low, just to wilt them very heavily. And then I took those, put them in a paper towel, preferably a cheesecloth if you have that. And I wring out all of the moisture. And then I was left with this little puck of mustard greens. You know, it's one of those things like spinach where you buy like what looks like an 80-pound bag and then you're left with 2 tablespoons. The volume like gets a lot smaller. It shrinks quite noticeably when you're cooking greens. So what I'm going to do is to prepare my gnocchi, the only thing I'm really missing is to cut up my greens. So I have my drink, very important. I have my ricotta, my breadcrumbs, my grated cheese, my beaten eggs, I have salt, and then I'm going to have my greens. So you really do want to cut them as fine as possible. So I'm going to just put this puck on my chopping board and just go over it and chop it repeatedly until it almost becomes a paste. So I'm going to chop it one direction and kind of rotate it and chop it a different direction and just keep doing this. I probably will go over it at least 3 or 4 times, and then I'll kind of show you how fine it gets. And then I'm going to put it right back into my container so that I can mix this into my ricotta when I make the gnocchi. So yeah, that's about 5 passes, give or take. As you can tell, it's just kind of like clumps, but it falls apart into these little bitty pieces. So that's what you're going for. You want it really finely chopped. Okay, so I'm going to put that back in my container. So right there. Put that over here. I'm going to rinse my hands real quick. And okay, so I'm going to put my chopping board over to the side temporarily. And we're going to get ready to mix our gnocchi. So you're just going to need a large bowl. I chose this last one basically just so you guys can see what's going on in the bowl. But stainless steel, Tupperware, anything really works. So what you want to do is put your ricotta into the bowl. And I'm just going to kind of mush it around a little bit so there's a little bit of a larger surface area for the rest of my ingredients. I'm gonna sprinkle in my breadcrumbs. And this is the reason mise en place is so important is I have all of my ingredients chopped up and ready to go, including the ones for my sauce. So I'm making a pasta essentially, even though ricotta is more of a dumpling, or sorry, gnocchi is more of a dumpling. The fact that I have all of this prepared means that once I prepare the base for my gnocchi and it has to rest a little bit, I can go ahead and start preparing my sauce. And then they kind of just tag team each other until they're both done instead of having to spend 30, 40 minutes on one thing and then hope it stays warm and then 30, 40 minutes on another thing. So in my bowl, I have my ricotta, my breadcrumbs. I'm going to put in my grated aged white cheddar, but y'all can use Parmesan. You can also use any other hard, salty, strongly flavored cheese. And then I'm going to put in my mustard greens. And I'm going to pour in my eggs. And I'm going to season it with about a half a teaspoon of salt. I highly recommend tasting your cheese and your breadcrumbs before you start making this dish. And I did salt my greens a little bit, so that also is a salty flavor in there. That way you can kind of know how much salt. And I'm just using a rubber spatula to mix this all together. You can use your hands, you can use a wooden spoon. If you have like a KitchenAid or a stand mixer, you can definitely use that as well. If you are going to use something electric though, just use the slowest speed possible. And then if you have the paddle attachment or the hook that beats bread, that would be your best bet. Definitely don't use a whisk. So you want to mix, and I'm kind of folding it in and then also kind of mashing it. So I'll put that up here so you guys can see. So folding is when you take your spatula and you kind of lift from the bottom, spread it on top, and then fold it. Think about like folding laundry. So you want to do that every so often. And then I just like to kind of take my spatula, spread it out a little bit, and then fold some more. And then I'm going to just keep doing this until I feel like I have a really consistent paste. And you should see it start to come together, much like a ball of dough. Like if you've ever made cookies or pie, or if you have made pasta, you'll see that it all starts to come together. Now, if for some reason you have been mixing this for, say, I don't know, 10 minutes, and it's not starting to come together, as you can see, mine is definitely becoming a ball. I'm going to spotlight myself because I always forget to do that. There you go. So mine is definitely becoming a ball. If it is still not coming together at this point, you probably have too much moisture or you overmeasured your cheese, in which case you can just add in a little bit more of your breadcrumbs, but just start slowly. You can always add more. It's very hard to adjust and take away. So I have this nice little dough ball. I'm going to kind of bring it together in the center of my bowl. And there you go. That's going to be my gnocchi dough. And what I'm going to do is put saran wrap over it. And I'm going to let it sit in my fridge for about 10 to 15 minutes. And the reason you want to do this, because most pastas like to rest when they have flour added. Because flour, when you start kneading it and adding all kinds of ingredients to it, starts to get really tough because it feels like it has all these gluten strands, which are a type of protein, and starch elements that once you start mixing everything into it, they get really, really tight because it's like you're forcing them to take in all this new information. Perfect. Algie says her dough's a little sticky, but it's still a ball. So that'll be fine because it will later be dusted in flour. So sticky is good as long as it's not like honey sticky. Like you definitely want it to be able to hold its shape a little bit. So that's definitely the texture you're going for. But when we use things that have flour, we definitely want to let them rest because we like to let those tensions relax a little bit. If anybody's ever made like pizza dough or bread, you've probably had the experience where you try to knead it out and then it won't go any further. No matter what you do, it just keeps shrinking back to its original size that it has. And that's because it's too tight and it just needs to rest a minute. So even when you're rolling doughs out or kneading doughs, sometimes just leaving it alone for a minute or 5, depending on what you're making, will allow you to stretch it out further. So in this case, the main reason we're letting it sit right now is so that we can have all those flavors kind of come together. So we're gonna let this sit in the fridge for about 15 minutes. I'm going to take all the dishes that my lovely house partner is going to take care of later. I'm going to put those in the sink. It's my favorite part of doing this. It's his least favorite, but he gets to eat it, so he doesn't get to complain about it. We'll put these over there. Okay. So far, of the people that are tuning in on the Zoom, are there any questions about the dough? Okay. Beautiful. I think that's okay. Silence is no answer is a good answer, I guess. So that is the base for the Malfatti. After that, I'm going to teach you here in a little bit how to shape it and cook it. It's very simple. So if you're going to be cooking along with me, what I'd like you to do right now, once you have that resting, is to have a pot or a skillet that you're going to heat your water in. I chose a large flat skillet, which I will show you here in a while, but it's got tall, straight walls, because when I'm cooking the gnocchi, I like to be able to pull it out with a slotted spoon, which is easier for me. I do smaller batches, but you can also just do it in a large pot like you would for pasta, and then you could use a strainer to pull them out or a slotted spoon, however you want. But you want to put salted water on high to start getting it to that temperature where we can almost bring it to a simmer or to a boil. In the meantime, so far, nothing on Facebook that I have to worry about. So what we're going to do is I'm going to travel with the computer, and we're going to learn how to make the garden sauce. So come with me, and you'll be in the kitchen world of my imagination. All right. This is my lovely old antique stained stove from the 70s. I'm going to bring over my ingredients. So for the garden sauce, I have 1.5 cups of passata, which is basically blended and strained tomatoes. It's not quite as thick as American tomato paste. You can use crushed tomatoes. You can use diced tomatoes. You can use fresh tomatoes, honestly. I just like this because it gives it more of that like spaghetti sauce type of format that we're all used to in America. So I have that. And then I have my lovely mise en place of pre-chopped veggies. I have minced onion, sliced bell peppers, and a parsnip. So this is about 1/2 onion. This is the little baby bell peppers that are only about 1.5 inches. So this is about 3 or 4 of them. And then this is 1 parsnip, very finely shaven. And the reason I chose these types of cuts, the onion will disintegrate a lot better when it's really nice and thin. The parsnip is in these like really thin half-moon slices, because in my brain, they're going to cook down and kind of wrap themselves around the gnocchi, which will be a really nice mouthfeel. And then these are a little bit thicker, but still thinly sliced peppers for texture and color. So I have those. I'm going to put those back here. And then I have my garlic. This is my absolute favorite life hack ever. I used to have to chop so much garlic when I first got in the industry. It is a pet peeve of mine, so I buy the pre-minced garlic. Don't judge me. You guys have crazy stuff in your house too. So I'm going to be making the sauce in a cast iron skillet, mainly so you guys can see the different ingredients going in a little bit better with that color contrast. You can use any skillet, honestly. I love cast iron. I have a lot of cast iron skillets. Cast iron does take a little bit longer to heat, so just make sure you account for that. I'm going to use some extra virgin olive oil. Put that in my skillet. And then if you guys are paying attention, over here on the back, I have my large straight-welled skillet with water and salt that has been on heat since we started, so that it'll be ready to simmer when we're ready to go. So far so good. Our ricotta gnocchi base is resting. We have our mise en place ready. I would highly recommend trying this with any number of vegetables. If you want to go the garden route like I'm going today, you can use mushrooms, zucchini, eggplant, different colored peppers, carrots. There's a lot of different ways you can go. And if you don't want to go that route and you just want to put in effort for one part of this, definitely make the gnocchi and then just put on a jarred tomato sauce or an Alfredo sauce or a combination of the two, which is actually really nice. You can really do anything you want. Think of it as spaghetti and then just add whatever you would like from there. Pretty sure LG is making a lemon sauce and something with bacon jam that sounded amazing, which I'm actually kind of jealous that I'm not doing that right now, but that's okay. I'll live to make this another day and make that variation. Almost forgot my drink, which is the most important part. The hardest part about this is waiting for your skillet to get warm. It always takes longer than you expect, and there's all this awkward silence. So then you get to drink and think about all the mistakes you've made in your life. Yeah, it tastes like a lot of regret. A lot of regret. All right, so key things on how to know when your skillet is really hot. Or hot enough, I should say. You never want your oil to smoke. It gives things an off flavor, but you do want things to sizzle immediately when they get into your pan. You don't want them to sweat, which is what happens when you put ingredients into oil in a cold pan. So usually a good rule of thumb is if you can hold your hand for more than 10 seconds over your pan without feeling a lot of heat, it's probably too cold. Some crazy people, and I do mean crazy, do not do this, what I'm about to say. Some people take water, put it on their fingertips, and then kind of flick it at their pan. Terrible idea. That is how kitchen injuries happen. Please don't hurt yourselves in quarantine. So what I like to do is take one little onion and see if it sizzles. Yeah, that's the sound. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I can hear that. So we're gonna make the sound a lot better. We're gonna put a lot of onion in there. Yeah.
It's like ASMR over here.
Right? That's the sound. The sound. It's the best sound in the world. So, putting my onion in there. And I'm just going to kind of move it around. This is a much larger pan than I need, but I don't care. The other ones are dirty and I didn't want to wash dishes. So, you want to kind of saute your onions until they get translucent. And I know a lot of recipes say that and not a lot of people know what that means. But if you really, really watch your food when it's cooking, your onions are like this opaque kind of color when you first cut them. And then as they start to cook, they'll get more and more transparent. And that's what we mean by translucent. Good rule of thumb is about a minute to 3 minutes. It just depends on how hot your skillet is, how you cut your onions. But if they do start to brown, that's also okay. You probably want to turn your heat down a little bit. And if you're trying to caramelize them, then you want to start like this. And then as soon as they start to brown, you turn it down really, 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 really low. And then you're just going to stir them every so often for anywhere from 20 minutes to 5 hours, depending on how many onions you're doing. And you can make onion jam, caramelized onions, and it is just a huge game changer. So I've got my onions. They're starting to brown just a little bit. I'm going to add in a very hefty spoon. Very hefty spoon. I like garlic, guys, a lot. So, yeah. We did that. It's a lot of garlic. It's good stuff. Italians don't believe in like half of an onion. They believe in all of it. So garlic tends to brown very quickly. So once it's in your skillet, you're only going to about cook it for maybe 20 to 30 seconds, especially if it's finely minced, until you add your next ingredient. So that's about 15, 20 seconds. I'm going to put in my peppers. And if your skillet's hot enough, you should still feel a light sizzle or hear a light sizzle every time you add a new ingredient. Look at those colors. It's so gorgeous. And these are sweet peppers. These are not spicy peppers, but you could totally use spicy peppers as well. All right. I'm gonna let those saute a little bit. I'm gonna turn my pan down just a touch. And don't forget, guys, our ricotta is in the fridge. So it is currently still resting. Just don't forget we have the gnocchi waiting for us. I want to say it's been about 10 minutes. So as you can see, I'm using my time wisely. Now that those have been in there for about a minute, I'm going to go ahead and throw in my parsnips. And the reason I'm putting in my parsnips last is because they're a little bit of a harder ingredient. And I wanted to meld all of the flavors of my mirepoix, which mirepoix is like your base, or what some cooks call the Holy Trinity. For a lot of people, it's onions, pepper, garlic. In Louisiana, it's onions, pepper, and celery. It just kind of depends, but they're your aromatics. You definitely want to do those first. And then you want to start with your heartier vegetables, which would be parsnips, carrots, potatoes, things of that nature, and then move from there to your softer ones, such as zucchinis, mushrooms. But things like mushrooms soak up a lot of things, a lot of that liquid, because they're like a little baby sponge. So you want to make sure you have some kind of liquid on hand, whether it's wine or broth. So I'm going to put those parsnips in there. And then it's almost time to go check on our gnocchi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down really nice and low. Really nice and low. I love having a gas stove, guys. I feel very sorry for you guys if you don't have one, but it's one of the best things in the world. So put my tomato passata in there. Give it a good little stir. And then this passata is unseasoned. It's just a natural tomato paste. So I'm going to add a little salt. And then I'm going to add some black pepper. And then I'm going to just kind of let that simmer on its own while we go check out the gnocchi. So we're traveling again, guys, because I don't have a camera person. So we're going to be back here at our countertop, which is noticeably empty. And we're about ready to roll out the gnocchi. So new little technique I'm going to teach you guys if you haven't seen it before. If you've never rolled something out, or if you have rolled something out, whether it's cookies, pie dough, pasta, bread, most people at home will take their flour, which is what I have right here, and then they'll do this to sprinkle it on their countertop. I don't know if y'all can see that very well, but it's kind of clumped, which is not something you really want, because what happens is part of the dough will get clumps of flour, right? So best technique, and then I have a baker on this call today, so hopefully she's not judging me too hard. Can be a little messy, but totally worth it. Just use a broom afterwards. But you want to take a small amount and then just kind of fling it so it'll be more of a dusting. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys what that looks like here in a minute. I'm going to do a little close up. So, clumps, dusting. Not perfect. I'm also not trying to clean my whole house. I'm used to having really big counter space, but dusting is definitely the way to go. So I'm going to check real quick on our tomato sauce, make sure it's not burning. It is indeed not burning. It's just bubbling lightly. So that's good to go. Going to get our gnocchi dough. And as you can see, it is kind of sticky. My hand sticks quite a bit. Get a little bit of like cheesy residue on my hands, but not crazy. So again, you want to just kind of dust your countertop. And then you're going to flour your hands. We're just going to flour the outside, basically, of our little dough puck. And I find that it's easiest to work in smaller quantities for me. Once you get the hang of it, you can definitely do larger portions at a time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into basically 4 portions. Let me put that one over there. We're going to work on Well, it's actually more like a fifth. But so I have this little part of the dough. What I'm going to do is in my hands first, I'm going to very softly start kind of molding it into a log. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, the name of this is poorly made. So like, go fuck it up. It's totally fine. If you feel it start to get sticky and absorb all that flour, you're just going to dust it a little bit more. We're going to shape it a little bit longer. And once it gets to about like the width of both of your hands, I have small hands, but once it gets to the width about both of your hands, then we're going to put it, pepper in my nose, sorry. I'm going to put it on our countertop, and then we're going to slowly, it's like going back to preschool and making little Play-Doh snakes. We're just going to slowly press just a little bit and roll and press, and it's just going to slowly get longer. And you just want to make sure to pause every so often and make sure that it's the same thickness all the way across. So, because we tend to press more with like the outside of our hands. So you want to make sure that you're using even pressure. If you can use your palms, that's the best part. And you don't want it super thin. You want it about the thickness of about 1.5 of your thumbs, unless you have really fat fingers, then just one thumb. But I have like normal sized thumbs, I think. So this is our log. And for reference, that's my thumb. So that's about right. So in diameter, about that thick. Okay, it's about like a quarter, a little bit like a quarter. So you'll notice that when you make this, you'll notice it's not super consistent like another type of dough, right? It looks like it's going to try and fall apart, but that's okay. So you have this little log, you just on the hands, you get a little knife, and then we're just going to cut little bitty pieces. I use 2 fingers as my measure. So I'm going to just cut 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are they're like little pillows that we're getting, guys. Cute little pillows. So got those. And once you get the hang of this, you can actually go quite fast and trying to keep it at an even pace, just because I've done this more than you guys. And then you just want to make sure that you can kind of take the edges of each little pillow, come around in the remaining flour on your board or on your countertop, just to make sure that they're evenly coated. That's going to help them float a little bit better when we cook them. It's also going to help them not get gummy on the outside. So don't forget, sauce on the stove. Sauce on the stove looks good. That's why we have it on super low. Learning to multitask. That's the hardest part of cooking. It's not the techniques, it's multitasking. Hopefully y'all are not deterred and this doesn't seem super complicated. But yes, so the beautiful thing about these little gnocchis is you can make the entire batch and then freeze them if you don't want to use them all today. I would say don't freeze them for too long. I've never really kept them more than 2 weeks before using them, just because the crystals that'll form depending on how cold your freezer is will end up degrading the texture, and you've put in all this beautiful work. So definitely you want to eat them the sooner the better. But they'll hold in your fridge for about a week. So you can also make these like on Monday, eat some, and then wait until like Saturday and eat the next batch. Yeah, so we have this healthy little batch of gnocchis, and I think, let's see, I think that's a good, we'll do a few little more. We'll do a little more for a full portion. So I have 4, 8, I'm gonna do about 12 dumplings for my portion. LG, thumbs up, you're doing all right over there, mixing along? Oh, those look gorgeous. Love those, beautiful. So remember, 2 fingers, 2 fingers, 2 fingers. All right, dusting them in a little flour. And if you have one of those, Casey, remind me the name. I'm having like a culinary brain fart. The things you use in baking that have a what?
Scraper.
Scraper, thank you. Ha! So yes, if you have a pastry scraper, that is my favorite way to cut gnocchi. Also because you can have multiple logs and then cut and sweep at the same time. It's a very fun thing to do. But I'm just using a regular one. But scrapers are by far better. Okay, so I have 13 dumplings. 13 is a lucky number for me. I like weird odd numbers. So these are my little dumplings. Then I'm going to transfer them to this little plate. Just in the meantime. And I'm gonna go put them back in the fridge just as I'm making sure. I wanna keep these as cold as possible because they're a very delicate gnocchi, so that cold is gonna help them seal together and also help them maintain their integrity once we cook them. So I'm gonna put them back in the fridge, check on my tomato sauce and my water, and then we're gonna cook them, and we're almost done. I'll put those in there. Take a quick minute to wash my hands so that I can touch my computer and take you guys with me. All right. So y'all are just gonna ignore this magically like it doesn't exist. Because when we come back, it'll still be here, but we're gonna pretend it's not. Movie magic is not that magic. I'm gonna put the rest of my dough back in the fridge. I'm gonna make that later. Then let's go check on our sauce. Our sauce is doing really, really well. I'm going to uncover our water. And trying to see, can you get, yeah, that you can see the little bitty bubbles. You want this at the lowest simmer possible. You do not want this boiling because if it's boiling, it will tear apart the gnocchi. I'm going to switch these so it'll be easier for you guys to get a better view here. But before I do that, I'm going to taste my sauce. And I'm going to do it like the chefiest way possible, where you use one spoon, you put a little bit of it onto another spoon so that you don't put your mouth cooties into your sauce. Oh, that's so fucking good. It's really good, guys. It's really good. Really good. Woo. Super excited to eat that later. Okay. So now to move very carefully all of my very hot skillets. Away. Also, big common mistake a lot of people make is using a damp towel to move hot items, and that is a very sure way to burn yourself because that heat will transfer so much quicker through a damp towel. So if you have one that you're using to dry your hands while you're off cooking, then use a separate thing or a oven mitt to touch your hot pans. Do as I say, not as I do. So I'm going to bring this back to a nice little simmer because it's on a new burner. And then all you need to have ready is your slotted spoon if you're using something like this, or if you have a deep pot, then what I like to do is if you have a slightly smaller one of these, I use that to scoop out all of my pasta, generally speaking, if they're like short shapes. Obviously, this is harder if it's like noodles or longer pasta shapes, but this is really good for small things like gnocchi or farfalle or things of that nature. So now, this is one of those dishes that pretty much when it's done, it's ready to eat. So the only other thing I want you guys to have on hand is the dish you're going to be serving this in, because as soon as the gnocchi comes out of the water, you want to put it directly into the dish that you're going to eat on, whether it's a bowl or a plate. So I have this very, very pretty plate. I'm going to put that right back here. Love having a 4-burner stove. Holds all these places for me. Are we doing well? Algie, are you in a place to start cooking?
Yeah, so the lemon sauce is like super delicate, so I'm working on finishing that, but my water is slowly simmering and I'm ready to go when you are.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. Let me double check on the Facebook peeps. Don't forget, very important to refill your drink at all times. Sober chefs are not as fun to work with. It's also not as fun to eat their food. Well, let's see. We have people on Facebook. All right, so far so good. Okay, put that over there. So apparently my water is camera shy and went from a simmer to a it hates me status. We're gonna try and bring it back to a simmer. I'm gonna bring it up high and then drop it back down low. So other options for sauces that I highly recommend. This also goes beautifully with just butter and cheese. You could do like a version of a cacio e pepe, which is a black pepper and cheese pasta. It's very simple to make. It just has to be something, I prefer this gnocchi with more delicate flavors, such as the lemon sauce that Algie is making, the brown butter mushroom sauce that I make. However, I really wanted to do heartier flavors with this just so it felt a little more filling. Because this is one of those things I could just eat bowls of it all day. So, see these little bubbles happening. Come on. Don't hate me, water. Don't hate me. Got people to feed. Do this. So literally the only thing that can go wrong now is if your water is boiling too intensely. So if you've been following along, I want to say we're at about 45 minutes or 40 minutes of cooking because I did a lot of talking in the beginning. And in 40 minutes, we've managed to make pasta and sauce, and we'll be done in about another 5 to 10, depending on my water and if it decides to cooperate. So this is a dish that you can make for anywhere between 2 to 4 people in under an hour, and it will rival some of the best pasta you've ever had out in real life. But what is real life anymore? I don't even know. Casey, I heard y'all are gonna try and eat this maybe this weekend.
Oh, we're gonna do this tomorrow. Yeah, we were just like dead to the world today.
I might tape the whole thing and entertain you.
Oh
later.
yeah, no, it's gonna be on Facebook.
It's gonna be great.
I would love that. That sounds great. Do y'all know what you guys are gonna put in your sauce?
We got the store-bought stuff, but maybe we'll get bay leaves and some, stuff like that.
Oh, I love bay leaves.
Dan is not a fan of red sauce.
I am a fan of red sauce.
No,
Quit-
you're
oh my god,
Lies.
no.
Lies.
Not red sauce.
I'll take like store-bought spaghetti sauce and I'll add like a crap ton of oregano and I'll add like spiced meat and I'll do all this other stuff, make meatballs, and he'll like not even eat a half portion.
Oh,
Like
you
barely.
can just invite me over. I'll eat it. Just invite me over.
I know. I just gotta trade Dan in for trade
You know what
Dan
also?
for
You know what also that I didn't mention goes really well on this is something like a pesto.
Ooh.
Yeah. Beautifully on this dish.
So
But okay, so the water's back to a simmer. I'm gonna run and get the noodles or the dumplings. All right, so I've got my cold dumplings, and I try to do this one portion at a time. So this is one portion. So I'm gonna slowly, my favorite way of doing this is I put a few of them on a spoon, let them sink into the water. That allows me to do more at once. And the whole idea is you're gonna put these in the water and they're gonna float to the surface, and you wanna let them float for about 30 to 40 seconds. And that'll ensure that the egg and the bread and the cheese is all melded together and properly cooked. So 30 or 40 seconds after they float. Full cook time is tops 3 minutes, as long as your water's at the nice simmer. So you can still see little bubbles. They're moving my little dumplings around. Right there, right there. We don't want it at a rolling simmer. Like I said, lowest simmer possible, because the bigger those bubbles, the more they're going to tear apart the gnocchi, because the gnocchi is not as smooth in texture as, say, like a potato, because that's got a lot of starch that holds it together. This is a much lighter preparation. So you'll also start to see like a lot of little floaty things in your water. Totally normal. It's little things that are coming off of your dumplings, but that's totally fine. Nothing to cause you concern. And if you overcook them too much, just put a lot of it in a strainer and then just have Italian mush. You know, it still tastes good. Do what you got to do. Eat some good food. All right, my sauce is still over here on low. You just want to make sure you're keeping your sauce nice and warm. And as you can see, they're almost starting to float. So, all right, so right now I've got about half of them floating. They all went in within about a 5 to 10 second span of each other. So they'll all come. I like to give it a small swish, just very, very lightly, like gentle as can be. Just get them circulating. Sometimes water gets stagnant with the heat. And now they're floating. See how beautiful that looks? So about 30 seconds. Then we're going to be ready to plate and serve. All right, in the 20 seconds I was gone, I rapidly cut up some sage. I'm gonna add that to my sauce over here. And in the 10 seconds that took me, the dumplings are pretty much ready. So very carefully, I'm gonna start lifting these out, draining as much water as possible. So I usually do 2, tops 3 at a time. A little shimmy. Put them directly onto my serving plate. This goes really nice if you have a little plate that's a little deep in the middle, a little like bowl. Oh my gosh, guys, these are looking absolutely perfect. And if you guys choose to make this at home, please send me videos. That way, if you guys do have any issues, you know, I can address them in real time or visually. So now my sauce is warm. I'm gonna take some of that, put it directly on top. And I'm all about contrasts here. We've got green in the pasta, red on my sauce. Make it extra saucy, because why not? And if you like a runnier sauce, then definitely don't cook it down as much as I did. And then we're about to do the big reveal. I'll pull this over to the magically not messy, but actually messy counter. Pull you guys back again after traveling. Then if you were in my cocktail class earlier today, then you know I made an egg white cocktail that had an egg yolk that needed to be used to appease the algae gods. So
Yes!
I have had this egg yolk sitting for about 2.5 hours now in an equal mix of salt and sugar. That is a curing, it's like a fast curing method that you can use. And most people would never really think to do this with egg yolks. I like to let them sit a lot longer than this, but in efforts of showing you guys what it looks like, if you let this sit for about 6 to 12 hours, they will get really nice and hard to where you can grate them. And that's my favorite thing in the world. They cure to where they're nice and tough, and then you can grate it, and you just grate it right over anything like you would cheese. So I'm gonna bring this over to camera. So I dug out from my little well this little egg yolk. As you can see, it's got the little powders on it. Now it's still fairly soft and liquidy in the middle. I love a good runny egg. So I'm gonna do my very best to very carefully dust off as much sugar and salt as I can, because right now, with it being this moist, it's gonna be really hard. I'm just trying to remove as much as possible so I can put it on top of my gnocchi. And then I'm gonna place that right in the middle, and I'm gonna cut into it when I eat, and it's gonna be delicious. So I'll give it a little taste. We'll be friends here, so you guys can kind of see the finished product. So this is one of the dumplings. As you can tell, it's pretty consistent now. So it should have almost like a potato type texture. Some might say I do this for a living. It's pretty good. And then I'm gonna cut open or try to cut this egg yolk and just divide it. So as you can see, I kind of cut it, but it's still pretty much holding its shape. It's cured quite a bit. It's not entirely runny anymore, but I'm gonna kind of dice that up and put it in little pieces all over my pasta. But that concludes our gnocchi class, guys. And that is how you make malfatti. Next week in the cocktail class, I will be doing savory cocktails. So that I hit like full chef mode this week. So we'll be using some very, very interesting ingredients such as rhubarb and fennel and corn and green tomatoes. So it'll be a very exciting class, and I'm going to try my hardest to either make a meal that will pair with the cocktails from the earlier class, or at least reutilize some of the ingredients that we'll be using in the cocktail class. So if you are tuning in on Facebook, I hope you make it. Send me any issues you guys have. I'm here to help you cook better. I want you guys to get on my level because my level is really not hard to be on. I want to demystify how hard people think things are. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live, and then hopefully I'll see you guys next week. Yeah, so let me see. Oh, wait. Algie, is yours done?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, let me put you on, like, let me spotlight yours so we can see yours in comparison because you cooked along. Ooh, sprinkling stuff on it.
That's the bacon jam.
Oh, bacon jam.
Fingers are, wait, now my fingers are sticky. Hold on.
That does not sound like a problem to me. Easy.
So I did some, I cut up some sun-dried tomatoes too. Oh, this is not working.
Okay. Oh, that looks beautiful.
Yeah, can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, yes.
I'll slide out of my bowl.
Nice.
Ta-da!
So did you put the kale in the sauce or in the gnocchi?
I put it in the sauce because I didn't have time to cut it up, like get it all wilty and chop it up for the gnocchi. But yeah, I'm super.
So if everybody paid attention to her gnocchi, it's a lot wider than mine because hers is just cheese-based, right? So like I said, you can totally do it without adding any greens. You could also add in like roasted bell pepper puree. You just have to adjust for the moisture of whatever ingredient you're adding in. So there's a lot of different options, a lot of ways to get creative. Love Algie's rendition with the lemon, bacon jam, kale, like sounds delicious. So yeah, goodbye to all you lovely people on Facebook. Wish you guys were enjoying this as much as we are because it's delicious in here, but maybe next time. Till next weekend. Thank you for joining Pandemic Pantry with Champ.